Distinguished colleagues and guests, good morning. It's March 4th, 2021, 11 a.m. Moscow time, and we're beginning the panel session for the defense of the thesis by Yulia Rybakova. The thesis is submitted for the academic degree of the candidate of Sciences in Economics. The specialization is 08005 Economics and National Economy Management. The topic of the thesis is value co-creation concept within development of innovative products. I announce the first technical break. technical break is over and we proceed. Unfortunately, one of our members of the board, Imre Dobash, is not able to participate because he doesn't hear us due to the technical failure. Therefore, we continue. Under the order issued by Alexander Gnyotov, the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg State University, as of December 28, 2020, number 120-22/1I, Yelena Korostashevskaya, Doctor of Sciences in Economics, Professor of the Department of Economic Theory and Economic Policy of St. Petersburg State University, was appointed the chairperson of this dissertation board, and the board also approved the candidacies of the members of the board. Let me introduce them. Oleg Matavilov, Doctor of Sciences in Economics, Professor of the Department of R&D Economy, St. Petersburg State University. And the following members of the board are working remotely today. Olga Karableva, Doctor of Sciences in Economics, Professor of the Department of R&D Economy, St. Petersburg State University. Olga, do you see us and hear us well? Yes? Good morning, dear colleagues. I do. Andrei Alexeyev, Doctor of Sciences in Economics, Professor of the Department of Economics and Management of Enterprises and Industrial Complexes of St. Petersburg State University of Economics. Andrei, do you hear us and see us? Yes, I do. Thank you. Then Vladimir Platonov, Doctor of Sciences in Economics, Professor of the Department of Economics and Management of Enterprises and Industrial Complexes of the St. Petersburg State University of Economics. Do you hear us and see us? Yes, I do. Thank you. And also our candidate for the degree, Yulia Rybakova, and Nikolai Molchanov, Doctor of Sciences in Economics, Professor of the Department of R&D Economy, St. Petersburg State University, is the thesis supervisor, and he is here with us today as well. Distinguished colleagues, in order to improve the quality of our connection, kindly turn off your microphones, but don't forget to turn them on when I give you the floor. I would also like to inform you that the panel session of the dissertation board is being recorded and broadcast on the St. Petersburg State University website, and our panel session is interpreted into English. Currently, we have an email address posted on the page with live broadcast of the board session, and all listeners can submit their questions to Ms. Rybakova online, the questions regarding the thesis or scientific discussion. These questions will be forwarded to me by our technical service, and I will read them out during the discussion. The questions must be related to the presentation and the content of the thesis, and if you submit a question, do not forget to give your name and position. Questions that have nothing to do with the scientific discussion or dissertation text will not be voiced. Under the order on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, approved by local normative acts, the session of the dissertation board is valid, providing 2/3 of the appointed board members are present. The total number is not to be fewer than 4 people. The dissertation board consists of 5 people. Everyone is with us today, including 3 members of the board who are working remotely. We have a multimedia connection with all the members of the board as well as with our candidate for the degree. Therefore, we have a quorum. And our session should not last more than 2 hours, and the agenda is as follows. First comes the chairman's presentation about the documents submitted by the candidate for the degree and their conformity with the requirements. Then candidate's presentation providing an overview and findings of the research, 15 minutes. Then questions to the candidate regarding the presentation, the candidate's replies to the questions, reports on the thesis. The board members will be taking the floor in turns to provide their reviews and questions, 10 minutes per speaker. Then the chairman's report on the thesis, 10 minutes for that. Then the candidate's comments about the reports on the thesis and replies to questions, 20 minutes for that. Then comes open discussion Everyone willing to speak out should register in the registry form and introduce him or herself before I give you the floor. Then the chairman will ask the questions submitted during the broadcast via our website. Then I would like to mention that those questions that take more than 2 minutes to read them out will not be voiced in the candidate's replies to the questions. Then presentation of the candidate's thesis supervisor. Then a 5-minute discussion before the open balloting on conferring or non-conferring the academic degree. The discussion of the results of the defense is not broadcast. Next comes open balloting, vote counting and recording of the results in the protocol. Next, we make a decision on whether to confer the academic degree or not, and finally we'll listen to the candidate's closing speech. Distinguished colleagues, any questions or comments on our agenda? Any questions on the agenda? Okay, no questions or objections, therefore let us proceed. And before that, I kindly ask you to switch off the sound on your mobile phones, but please don't take this, take your mobile phones, don't put them away too far because we may need them. So I start my short presentation. The thesis by Yulia Rybakova for the academic degree of the candidate of Sciences and Economics, the Specialisation 080005 Economics and National Economy Management, Innovation Management, is titled Value Co-Creation Concept within a Development of Innovative Products. The thesis was approved for the defense by the order of the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg State University, issued on December 24, 2020. Yulia Rybakova has prepared her dissertation at St. Petersburg State University. And Nikolai Molchanov, Doctor of Sciences and Economics, Professor of the Department of R&D Economy, is the thesis supervisor. 7 published works describe the research findings. They include 4 papers published in peer-reviewed journals recommended by the Ministry of Education and Science, and 1 paper in publications indexed in Web of Science and Scopus. The candidate has submitted the full set of documents to the academic secretary. The above-mentioned documents comply with item 12 of section 3 of the order. All the documents submitted by the candidate for the degree are comply with the requirements and are found in the certification file. And the curator of the defense, member of the Department of the Dissertation Board Support, present here, has all the copies of these documents. And before I give the floor to the candidate for the degree, I would like to ask if anyone has any general questions to the candidate for the degree, and is there a need to read out the whole list of documents submitted? Dear colleagues? Okay, no need for that. No questions, and we proceed. So the short presentation by Ms. Rybakova, please, you have the floor. Yulia, no more than 15 minutes. Thank you very much. Good morning, dear members of the board. Let me give you the results of my thesis on the topic, the concept of value co-creation in the development of innovative products. And Professor Molchanov was my thesis supervisor. First of all, I would like to mention the relevance of the topic. Currently, the mechanisms of interaction of the producer and consumer undergo 3 colossal changes. The activity of the companies oriented at success at midterm prospect is becoming critically dependent on the needs of the final client. Therefore, not including the customer in the development process, the company won't be competitive. The essence of the concept of value co-creation is the integration of efforts of all participants of the process in order to satisfy the needs of customers. Such participants include science, different types of businesses, state, and certainly the people as consumers. Contemporary university is the center that unites science, business, and consumers to give competitive innovation. However, in the majority of companies and universities, they do not pay sufficient attention to the implementation of the concept of the value co-creation in the development of new products. It should be mentioned that in scientific publications, these issues are not studied well, and they were not given much attention. Therefore, we developed our goal, namely the analysis of the use of concept of value co-creation in the activity of innovation-oriented companies and the forms of its implementation in the development of innovative infrastructure of the university. And the goal defined the tasks that we are to meet. The subject and the object of the study are also given on the slide, and the slide also has the information on the sources of the information base of our study. As for the scientific novelty, it is stated here in 6 points. And now let's consider all of them step by step. So, the first result is dealing with the notion introduced by the author, the notion of client-oriented innovation. Client-oriented innovation is the innovation of all types that we got as a result of integration of the consumer into the innovative process at any stage of the cycle. It should be mentioned that client-focused innovations, mostly the incremental ones that improve the current technologies and products. The thesis has substantiated the provision on the shift to client-oriented innovations after studying the theoretical approaches and business models within the framework of open innovations theory. The shift to client-oriented innovation transforms the models of the company, in which the process of involvement of consumers is becoming the key one. So, Article 2 is connected with the empirical study. The goal was to organize an analysis of the practice of the use of the toolkit used to generate value co-creation in Russian innovation-oriented firms. And within the framework of the study, we questioned the managers of innovative companies of St. Petersburg and the Leningrad region. The study was held 2 times in 2014 and 2017. Within the framework of the first polling, we got 42 answers and 102 during the second polling. The most interesting result is that regardless of the sphere and the size of the company, the mechanisms of value co-creation are present in the activities of the company, but they are not actively used. And at that we see the dominance of the simplest mechanisms of interaction with the customer. And certainly in order to and certainly we should consider the crisis in the economy when we talk about the successful implementation of such mechanisms. Article 3 is connected with the modification of one of the methods of interaction of the company and the consumer. This method was modified with the application of the concept of value co-creation. The classical quality function structuring method did not take into account the readiness of the customer to undertake certain functions on maintenance. Therefore, we offered to change the structure of the home rooms, quality home rooms, in order to take into account the additional options that the client is ready to undertake. And we also added up the index of competitiveness that shows to what extent the developed products comply with the ideal of the customer. It did not just take into account the lagging behind or superiority over similar products. As for the validation of the method, it was performed using the smart home system. And the analysis allowed us to define the major characteristics of the smart home system, and within the framework of the study we define both technical indicators and the quality parameters. All the analyzed indicators are given here on the slide. As a result, we define that the company develops and brings into the market competitive products, and above all, due to the provision of this choice of services to the customer, the company has an opportunity to vary the price compared to rival companies. Next article of scientific novelty is the author's modification of the functional organizational structure of the company that is dealing with the development of innovation based on value co-creation. In addition to traditional developers' positions and also the positions of financial analyst and marketing expert, we also have the consumer in this team of experts, and the consumer should have a right to participate in the development of all stages. At all stages. And as a result, we have this dialogue between the consumer and the producer, and the consumer gets the desired product. Fifth point is connected with two empirical studies. We held questionnaires at St. Petersburg State University and Tallinn Technical University. The goal was to define the level of innovation and propensity of contemporary customer to this core creativity and core development, and also the factors depending on the country. Within the framework of the study, we questioned 1,207 respondents. You see the characteristic here on the slide. A second empirical study was aimed to detect the relations of the student, and their attitudes to the development of such projects, and we questioned 493 respondents. You see the characteristic of the study here on the slide. And all the results were analyzed using the frequency and regression analysis and correlation coefficient. The most interesting result was that geography has an influences just the motivation for participation, but there were no some drastic differences among the participants. And overall, the results confirm the hypothesis that the most important factor for the consumer is the functional characteristic, price, and externality. This influences the desire of the customer to participate in joint developments, because thus the customer can change the product or the price. Finding out this correlation interaction and setting up the regression models, it was defined that such factors as gender, income, the level of education, and innovation level influence this propensity to co-creative activity. And also students are highly interested in such activities of business incubators at the universities. That's what we confirmed. Based on the results of the study of innovativeness, the propensity to creative activities, and the desire to participate, we can mention the modernization of the innovative infrastructure of the university. Thus, the sixth point of scientific novelty describes the model of the innovative infrastructure of the university that includes the crowdfunding and crowdsourcing platforms. The implementation of such platforms on the basis of business incubator will be a competitive advantage compared with other incubators at the universities. And it was defined that the efficiency of the proposed model of the innovative infrastructure is explained by the implementation of the quadruple calyx that allows to create prospective strategic alliances between science, business, and consumers. And within the framework of the platform of value co-creation, we'll see not just the development of business ideas and scientific theories, but also consultations will be provided. And this will be an impetus to register and open up new small innovative enterprises, which will in turn favorably influence the economy of the region. And summing up, I want to draw your attention to the correspondence of these articles of scientific novelty to the requirements of specialization, namely to articles 2.3, 6, 7, 11, 14 and 24. And I would also like to mention that some of these modification methods are already introduced and applied in the activities of the GS Group holding. Thank you very much. That's it. Thank you very much, Yulia. Please, dear members of the board, any questions to Yulia? Are there any questions to her, to Yulia, on the report? So, Oleg, please, yeah. So I wanted to ask the question on chapter 3. 3 questions. The first question: if we're going to consider crowdfunding platform, and you have an offer to create a crowdfunding platform for potential investors, they're interested in such crowdfunding platforms that give a lot of offers, so that they would have an opportunity to choose and they would have a mass of projects to choose from. And in this regard, doesn't it seem to you that this platform, crowdfunding platform in business incubator, will be a failure? Because over here I've seen this stand, 17 innovative enterprises. So the university has assigned to support such enterprises, and we have a business incubator that is 2.5 years old officially. So we had just less than 20 innovative companies, and the question is, what are you going to discuss at this crowdfunding platform if there's no such a desire to create such enterprises? Taking into account the fact that Russia has a lot of crowdfunding platforms, and overall there are a lot of offers there. That's the first question. I believe you can answer it once. Thank you very much. Professor Matavilov, yes, indeed, you're right. Everything has its origin. Therefore, there are several options for the development of this aspect initially, at the initial stage. It's possible not just to create the new platform, but to integrate the existing crowdsourcing or crowdfunding platform into the current activities of the business incubator. For example, some kind of partnership. So on this platform, we'll not just have those projects that we have within the framework of the business incubator of the university, but also we'll have certain side projects that we can discuss and finance if we have an opportunity. And later on, when we gain scale, these platforms gain scale, we will be able to separate them into separate platforms, university separate platforms, if the turnover will allow to do that. Okay, second question. If we consider the current innovative infrastructure of the St. Petersburg State University, and you give it at, in your thesis, it includes the Science Park and the Department of the Organization of External Financing for Research Works. And you offered a novel scheme in your thesis, a novel scheme of innovation for the university, and I didn't see these 2 structural subdivisions in this scheme. Why so? Thank you very much. These schemes are integrated into the structures that are given on the slide, the Center for Intellectual Property and Technology Transfer and Business Incubator. So that's a cumulative. These are cumulative indicators that integrate those structures, that involve those structures described in the thesis that belong to the innovative infrastructure of the university. Therefore, we don't exclude these structures from the innovative infrastructure of the university. So basically, Unfortunately, I didn't understand it from your work. So you basically offer a kind of reorganization of the Center for Intellectual Property and Technology Transfer, because now that's a separate structural subdivision. And those two that I've mentioned, Science Park and the Department of the Organization of External Financing, they are separate. And you offer to give the center these authorities. Well, yes, that's one of the options that I offer. One of the options of the implementation of this model. And did you mention that with the heads of these departments? That's in the process of we are discussing it right now. And on page 96, you mentioned that business incubators start to generate revenue to university on year 5. Therefore, I have 2 questions. Where did you get these statistics? There was no reference to the source of information. So I'm interested to learn where you took this information. And the second question, what is this benefit? Business incubators start generating financial income. So what is this kind of income for the university? What's this advantage? So as for the first question, this conclusion was made based on the expert opinion, including my author's opinion, because I organized a lot of work and I studied the business incubators, the European ones and the Russian ones as well, that I gave in the thesis. Therefore, that's an expert opinion that allowed me to conclude that the financial benefits are something that we see on year 5 after the organization of the business incubator. And as for financial profits, these are the money that we have from affiliated companies, for example, seed capital, and also cash flows from lease of some dwellings, and also consulting services, and so on and on. So these are these cash flows that business incubator residents bring in. Okay, thank you. Distinguished colleagues, any other questions to Yulia? Distinguished colleagues, distinguished chairwoman, I have a question. Yulia, could you please tell us, have you considered the calculation of efficiency of the introduction of the concept on value co-creation in companies? Thank you very much for the question, Professor Korobleva. No. Based on the mathematical calculations, we did not consider this aspect. It was shortly considered, but it was just an idea and expert opinion. No more than that. Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, I have one. Distinguished chairwoman, distinguished colleagues, I want to ask the following question. Yulia, I believe you expect this question. Could you please tell us the concept of value co-creation in the development of innovative products as applied to the structure of the university that you considered? Are there any prospects to use the blockchain technologies here? Or maybe distributed ledgers? Vladimir, thank you very much for the question. I believe, yes, there is such a chance, because the blockchain technology has been actively developing in all spheres of business. So why not use it if we have sufficient data volume or the need to code this data? Why don't we introduce this technology into the innovative infrastructure of the business incubator in case that we need it? But we should understand that that's quite a capital-intensive technology, and it requires a lot of resources at the introduction point, and quite stable maintenance of finance. So there's a question on the adequacy and the need to introduce this technology. And yet another question, if I may. The results of your study demonstrate that the innovativeness in Tallinn is higher. The innovative mindset of students is more pronounced than there than in St. Petersburg State University. The question is, how do you think, can we use some organizational methods to compensate this lower innovativeness and thus achieve a result? Or do we need to concentrate on the improvement of innovativeness of the students? Because that's a parameter that we can manage. So is it an organizational point? Is my question clear? Yes? Yes, it is. I believe that within the framework of any group, if it's limited by a certain barrier, and in this regard we're discussing the university, we can artificially raise any factor, and we can artificially stimulate the development of innovativeness in students of St. Petersburg State University, organizing different events or involving them in some innovative activity. Thus, this stimulation and a bit of coercion will give us the result that we need. But as we understand, in any innovative group, we may vary these indicators and work with them if we have such a goal. And I have a question as well. If we position St. Petersburg State University as an excellency center, what do we need to do with our innovative structure? And what do we need to see there, and in order to improve the image of St. Petersburg State University as an excellency center? Thank you very much for the question. I believe that any work aimed at the improvement of brand recognition, any work on the improvement of connections of the university, on the expansion of access to certain resources that the university can provide to the students and to graduates and to employees, so all of that will be useful, and in certain period of time, maybe in short period of time, we will see the real effect, and we will understand that the university indeed has improved its innovativeness and has strengthened its position, maybe initially the Russian arena and then at the global one. So that's the work that is connected with communications, with other subjects, with authorities, with businesses, and with scientific institutions as well. Thank you so much. And we proceed. We have an external review submitted by Fyodor Bayarkov, the head for production development of the GS group. So Mr. Bayarkov mentions that the thesis of Ms. Rybakova is a finished study, and the results were tested in the development of the assessment of new projects of the holding and within the framework of participation in expert group as well. And the desire of the company to survive leads the companies to the use of new methods in the development of the innovative products. And within the activities of the production department, Yulia has several times proven the market efficiency and inefficiency of projects using the concept of value co-creation. And she made a huge contribution in the development of the new system, Smart Home, with the use of modified methods of structuring the quality functions. And also she detected the new groups of consumers and defined their needs. And this allowed to establish a new offer in the market. And Yulia is an expert of the working group that is established at the Association of the Consortium of Radio Electronic Industry, an assessment of projects, and they not only forecast the scope and detect the potential need of the market, but also they verify the product plan of the industry with final consumers. And within the framework of expert sessions, Yulia was able to fully verify the modified methods for marketing teams, and in practice she demonstrated the skills and relevance of application of the concept of value co-creation. And as a result of this work, they formed and submitted a package of documents to the Ministry of Industry of the Russian Federation in order to develop new and optimize the old financial instruments aimed at the support of the industry in the implementation of new projects. And the thesis also offers important relevant mechanisms and methods of the interaction between the companies and consumers if we consider the launch of new competitive products in the market. And an important aspect here is that these methods can be applied in different markets. And Yulia demonstrates it in practice, working on the assessment of different projects of the GS Group holding. And the conclusion, the thesis by Yulia Rybakova, titled Value Co-creation Concept within the Development of Innovative Products, meets the requirements of the order as of September the 1st, 2016, number 6821/1 on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University. And Ms. Rybakova deserves the academic degree of the Candidate of Sciences in Economics in Specialisation 080005 Economics and National Economy Management, Innovative Management. Article 11 of the above-mentioned order is not violated. So, and the signature, Fyodor Bayarkov, Director for Production Development, GS Group Holding, February 8, 2021. And now we shift to the speeches of the members of the board, and I would like to give the floor to Oleg Motovilov. So, please, Professor, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Distinguished colleagues, the thesis of Ms. Rybakova is dedicated to the analysis of the concept of value co-creation in the activity of innovation-oriented companies. And the author was based on the fact that for a firm to be successful in the market, the firm should be focused on the consumer. And such an approach gives us an opportunity for co-creativity when the client is involved into the creation of the value of the product. And this is possible if we introduce certain organizational changes in companies. And the change of the role of consumer helps the companies to achieve success in the market. However, considering the fact that this concept of value co-creation was studied abroad and in Russia, we cannot but recognize that the instruments of this concept are not quite in demand. Therefore, the goals set by the author are quite relevant, and their achievement is of particular importance. As an object of study, the author chose innovations created with the participation of possible consumer, client-oriented innovations. In chapter 1, the author analyzes the essence and the trends of the development of the concept, and also the use of appropriate instruments of innovation-oriented companies in Russia. And she mentions that it gives an opportunity to eliminate the information asymmetry between the producer and the consumer. That's page 14. And author formalized different options of involvement of the consumer into this value co-creation process. Depending on the size of the firm, on its goals and market segment, the author defines 5 points of interaction between the company and the consumer. And also, Ms. Rybakova restricts the applicability of the concept, saying that client-oriented innovations are incremental ones. They just improve the current technologies or products. That's page 29. And the interest in paragraph 1.3 What's interesting in paragraph 1.3 is the results of the conducted study of implementation of the toolkit. And in chapter 2, she makes a conclusion to modify the quality function deployment method, and she introduces certain corrections. And this method also is supported by the calculation of the competitiveness index. The modified QFD method was tested on the development of the new product of the company that is working with the introduction of the smart home to the market. And in chapter 3, the author gives us the results of 2 studies on the level of innovativeness and the propensity to creative activities among the students of 2 universities, St. Petersburg State University and Tallinn Technical University, and also the study on the interest of St. Petersburg State University to take part in the work of the business incubator. And the results allowed to formulate some final recommendations on the improvement of the innovative structure of St. Petersburg State University, considering value co-creation concept. Overall, I would like to mention that the work is an original study that covers relevant topics in the marketing of innovations, if we talk about the innovative products development. And the conclusions and recommendations are theoretically substantiated. The credibility is not questioned as well, and it is based on the analysis of scientific works of Russian and foreign authors. The author used regulatory bases and acts of different level and specialized internet resources. And also she has 7 publications, including an article indexed in Web of Science. As for the scientific novelty, I believe it is as follows. First, she defined the term of client-oriented innovation, which are incremental. Second, she studied the practice of implementation of marketing toolkit to define relations, and she also studied the concept of value co-creation. 6 of the author's hypotheses were tested, 4 of them were confirmed. The results allowed to define the level of involvement of Russian or innovation-oriented companies into this process of value co-creation. Third, the author offers a range of recommendations in order to modernize the methods of structuring of the quality function with the application of the value co-creation concept. Then, the author substantiated the expediency of the reorganization of the functional organizational structure of the company, dealing with the development of competitive innovations based on the concept of value co-creation within the framework of the recommended modification to adapt to the role positions of financial analyst and marketing expert and developer. The author includes the representative of customer, the consumer of innovation. A 5th provision. Based on the results of the study of the innovativeness and propensity to cooperation among students of St. Petersburg State University and Tallinn University, regression models were created, as well as the factor analysis that influenced the motivation of the consumers in joint projects. And recognizing the achievements of this work, I would like to mention certain debating points. First, on page 22-23, the author considers different approaches to the definition of innovation. And Oslo manual is considered as one of the options along with other authors. And I was surprised with that, because Oslo manual is an internationally recognized document that establishes the terminology in the innovative sphere, and it was developed under the aegis of OECD and Eurostat. And our legislation is based on the conceptual framework of the Oslo manual, by the way. And Russian law on science, federal law on science and state scientific and technical policy is not mentioned at all. Second point, I do not agree with the situation of the emergence of small innovative enterprises that she called external venture and spin-off. These are terms widely used in Russian literature and global literature. As for the author, she considers that it is a small enterprise that got financial support of a large high-tech company in exchange for the packet of shares in this small company. The approach that is used in the economy defines the spin-off as a small firm that was found by the holding company in order to implement specific innovative project. And this is the approach that is mentioned in Vaidyatsev's article that the author refers to. Third point. In paragraph 2.3, you give the validation of the modified method of the structuring of quality function. And as an object of study, you've chosen the smart home system based on the service of component technology of the Internet of Things. And the description of this system was a bit excessive, more than 10 pages. Fourth point. In paragraph 3.1, you mention on the strategy of innovative development of the Russian Federation up until 2020, which has formally come to an end and that was not fulfilled. And the strategy adopted in 2016 on the scientific and technological development of Russia up until the period up until 2035 was not mentioned at all. 5. I can't agree with the author that the list of objects included in the Technopark structure may include the state authorities' structures. And 6th point, I don't agree with the author that says that historically Estonia and Russia had economic and cultural ties for centuries, and therefore we can mention the similar mentality of these people. I believe that there is a huge difference here. Paragraph 3.3 is titled The Substantiation of Expediency of the Creation of Business Incubator at St. Petersburg State University. The question is, why do you explain the expediency of an incubator that was created more than 2 years ago? And it was not quite popular if we consider the number of startups. But that reflects the general Russian problem of low level of innovative development. And the last point, on page 130, the author writes that the concept of value co-creation was considered as one of the components of the innovative infrastructure of the university. And I question this approach because the definition of the innovative infrastructure, including the interpretation of the Federal Law 127, considers the innovative infrastructure as a combination of organizations that will promote the implementation of innovative projects. But any scientific concept is not an organization. And these drawbacks do not compromise the value of other ideas and the overall high overall favorable opinion. And as for conclusions, they are quite substantiated. The recommendations can be applied in organizations, and I believe that the publications fully reflect the content of the thesis and characterize the author as a qualified expert. And the conclusion of the thesis by Yulia Rybakova, titled Value Co-creation Concept within the Development of Innovative Products, meets the requirements of the orders of September 1st, 2016 on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, and Ms. Rybakova deserves the academic degree of the candidate of Sciences and Economics in Specialization 080005, and Article 11 of the above-mentioned order is not violated. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Oleg. Now I give the floor to Yulia. So please. Professor, thank you very much for your comments. So let's go step by step. As for the first question, dealing with the definition of innovation, I would like to emphasize that the goal was to show the different semantic definitions of innovations. Therefore, I don't give just the basic definitions like in Oslo Manual, but also the variations of other authors and experts in innovation. As you mentioned, and I fully agree, the Oslo Manual is an internationally recognized document establishing the terminology in innovation. And in accordance with federal law on science and state scientific and technical policy, the notion of innovations is defined based on this Oslo Manual. Therefore, I don't give this direct reference to the federal law. As for the second question on spin-off companies, yes, I also fully agree. Thank you. Maybe that's my mistake, because this notion of spin-off company was not described fully. Third point, as for the need to describe the system of the smart home, this information is a bit excessive in the work, but it is given in order for everyone to understand the system and its technical characteristics and ways to implement it. This information is important, and the technical characteristics are given as well. And in the description, we also have the proof of the innovation of this company. Therefore, the author considered that we need to introduce this information in order to understand the market. And as for the strategy of innovative development, yes, it would be more correct to refer to the strategy up until 2035. But as the strategy is a comprehensive basis for the development of documents, the author mentions that we are mostly oriented at certain ministries that regulate the activity of organizations and structures. And as for question 5, I meant that the elements of technoparks may be the objects that are the objects of state property. And as for question 6 and mentality of Estonians and Russians, certainly we should consider that. But it does not influence the situation quite a lot. And the percentage of Russian population reaches 50% in Tallinn, by the way. And as for question 7 and substantiation of the expediency to create business incubator in St. Petersburg State University, I would like to mention that the study was held several years ago, and its results helped to make this decision. And now we offer the options to improve the efficiency of the work of business incubators, and I meant here I implied the development of crowdfunding and crowdsourcing platforms. And the last point is that certainly the concept of value co-creation should be considered as one of the mechanisms on the development of innovative infrastructure of the university. And this fact is reflected in the work, and therefore this distortion is not that critical. Thank you so much. I'm satisfied with the answer. Okay, now I give the floor to Olga Karableva. Olga, please. Distinguished chairwoman, distinguished colleagues, on the relevance of the study, the concept of value co-creation in the development of innovative products is substantiated by a range of provisions that give us the theoretical and practical value. And considering the current paradigm, we see the change of value orientation of business and the growth of the importance of the client as one of the important stakeholders in the concept of optimization of business processes. The implementation of these approaches leads us to the need to improve the transparency of the companies, and one of the key provisions here is the idea of the client. And that client-oriented focus of the business is observed in all stages of the development of the companies in value creation change. The client is a core creator of this value chain. And the vector of this concept is aimed at the preservation of knowledge and consumer competence when we talk about innovative products and services. And the key marketing business process is experience management based on digital platforms and mobile applications. In such conditions, we need contemporary toolkit that could be used in the development of client-centered innovation. The main provisions of the study are based on in-depth analysis of the works of leading Russian and foreign sciences, on the use of state-of-the-art scientific methods, the use of a broad range of sources, and the validity of the results is supported by the data received during empirical studies, and they also conform with the expert assessments, and the results were tested at scientific conferences. And I believe that it is possible to confirm the credibility of the new results that add up to the knowledge in theory and practice of marketing and innovation. And I would like to mention a number of points about the thesis. First of all, the author made a huge contribution into the development of the terminology framework. And here I should mention the notion of client-oriented innovation that the author has developed. And also she carried out an empirical study within the framework of which she managed to define the specific mechanisms of value co-creation something that lack a structural approach to the application. And the analysis has demonstrated that this level of application of this mechanism is not dependent on the size of the company. The author also improved the method of structuring of quality function, and she also provided the methods that allow us to create an ideal consumer concept that would fully meet the needs of the customer. And also there is a change in the sequence in the algorithm of the classical model of value creation. The part of functions on innovation maintenance is taken by the client. That's page 54. And within the framework of work, we should understand that there are novel conclusions on the modified method for companies that develop a smart home system. And here she concludes that the level of involvement of the customer influences the competition. And the level of involvement of the customer into this joint creative process is also very important. The author provides the substantiation of the need to modernize the structure of the notion, the marketing team. That's page 59. And there's a need to introduce additional amendments to this structure. And there's a need to introduce the potential consumer into this team. and above all, based on the field study of the level of innovativeness and propensity to creativity of the consumers of innovation, depending on the country and social and demographic characteristics, the author managed to support the need to open up special platforms on the basis of universities, namely in St. Petersburg State University. That's paragraph 3.2. And regardless of this positive points, I believe that there are certain debating points as well. So, as for the terminology, in chapter 3, the author is based on the term innovativeness of the consumer, but does not introduce the definition. And as far as we believe, in order to secure terminological unity, we should interpret marketing team as a team of aimed at marketing. And in Article 3.4, she provides recommendations on the improvement of the innovative structure of the university, using the example of St. Petersburg University, taking into account the concept of value co-creation. And she pays attention to the consideration of the internal structures activity, and the concept of value co-creation provides for the active involvement of external stakeholders. And I don't see the full substantiation of the opportunity to use crowdfunding instruments in educational institutions. And overall, the conclusion is as follows. The thesis by Yulia Rybakova, titled Value Cooperation, Concept Within the Development of Innovative Products, meets the requirements of the orders of September 1st, 2016 on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University. And Ms. Rybakova deserves the academic degree of the candidate of Sciences and Economics in Specialisation 080005, and Article 11 of the above-mentioned order is not violated. Thank you so much. So please, I give the floor to Yulia. Thank you so much for the comments. And now, as for the first question on this definition of innovativeness, this term innovativeness was a cumulative one that was introduced in the text, and it is interpreted as a propensity of students to use innovations and the participation in innovative events. As for the second question on possible recommendations on the improvement of the innovative infrastructure, indeed, we could more attention to the aspects that you mentioned, and later on I will take that into account in my further studies. Thank you. Thank you, Yulia. Now I give the floor to Professor Platonov. Please, you have the floor. First of all, a few words about the relevance. Do you hear me? Yes, we do. Use of the concept of value co-creation allows the companies to involve consumers in the process of innovation development. As a result, the created products and services mostly correspond to the ideal consumer model. And this co-creative process participant are different kinds of businesses and R&D developers, and the customers as well. And the coordinators include universities and different platforms based on it. The relevant field is the introduction of and the use of the concept of value co-creation based on business incubators, where on the one hand we have active mechanisms aid at the development of innovation, and on the other hand we not fully use the principles of value co-creation as regards to institutions. And we can conclude that there is a need for scientific elaboration on this topic, and we should mention the lack of works that consider this question. Therefore, I believe that this topic of the study is quite relevant. As for the development of the topic, substantiation and credibility of the conclusions, as well as the validity of the conclusions, are supported by the in-depth elaboration of the sources, 219 sources, 80 sources in the English language, and also the basis of these works is the academic studies given in the scientific basis, the articles in peer-reviewed journals recommended by Higher Attestation Commission, and also the participation in scientific conferences. And above all, she organized an empirical study within the framework of which the author studies the innovation and propensity to joint creativity. And the results are tested in 11 articles and on 4 conferences. And as for the validity and the novelty of the provisions, first of all, the author added up terminology to the framework, analyzing the sources. She provided the term of client-oriented innovations. That's page 28. And the author demonstrates that they include incremental innovations at difference promoted by the involvement of customer into the innovative process. And she also provides the definition of she also provides the classification of joint innovations that may lead to complex solutions. Second point, there are authors' hypotheses that were proposed and validated, and also the author offers the modified methodology of the structuring of functions of quality based on the involvement of the customer, and also describes the ideal model of the product that would 100% meet the needs of the customer. And she also modified the model that takes into account the readiness of the customer to undertake part of functions on the creation and the service for the new product. And these modified methods were tested in the development of the smart home system. We're talking about methodology here. And the author authors a modified organizational structure of the company that uses the concept of value co-creation that should include the representative of the customer. And this through structure would allow us to create a synergy effect from the cooperation of participants. She also checks the hypothesis on the interaction between social and demographic characteristics of the potential customer and the level of innovativeness. And the author also defined the role of universities in this value co-creation. This model includes crowdfunding and crowdsourcing platforms. And the efficiency of the model of the innovative structure is explained by the use of the quadruple helix concept that includes state, science, business, and consumers. However, there are certain debating points in the work. First, the empirical study of the level of innovativeness in students of St. Petersburg State University and Tallinn Technical University is implemented using the correlation analysis. Considering the goal of this thesis to use joint developments in the activity of innovation-focused companies and the forms of its implementation, it would be more expedient to model to use the structural equations or factor analysis with the definition of key components. In this case, the results are more informative if we want to substantiate the proposals on the development of forms and methods. And the author also is using regression analysis, but when we're talking about the development of an organization form, and the author, by the way, has quite a complex task because on the one hand, she has foreign studies that are rather studies, and on the other hand, our tradition, according to which we are not focused on scientific studies, but rather on developments that are substantiated. And she needs to combine both. Overall, the author has successfully managed to do that, but there's a point that required additional development because the structural equations and factor analysis is something that allows to substantiate such forms. Next point, the author analyzes the use of instruments of value co-creation within the framework of the innovation-oriented companies in the Russian Federation. And it is expedient to compare these results with the conclusions of foreign studies in this field. Third point, this factor, the market in which the company is working, this factor defined by the author in the empirical study is not a factor of the internal as the internal environment of the it's not a factor of an internal environment of the company, so that's an oxymoron. And the author should have used the concept of absorbing potential. Fourth point, the author provides different approaches to the definition of innovations. And she does not notion the definition from the federal law on science and state scientific and technical policy. And she gives it as a source of literature. And certainly these comments do not compromise the value and the importance of this study. And the thesis of Yulia Rybakova, titled Value Co-creation Concept Within the Development of Innovative Products, meets the requirements of the order on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, and Ms. Rybakova deserves the academic degree of the Candidate of Sciences in Economics and Specialization 080005, and Article 11 of the above-mentioned order is not violated. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Vladimir. And I give the floor to Yulia to answer. Yulia, please. Thank you very much, Professor, for the comments and for the review. As for the answers. The first question was on modeling of data processing. At this stage, the author decided to consider regression model and correlation ties. And in further studies, I may add up new factors, considering the psychographic characteristics of respondents. And based on that, I will be able to create multi-factor models that would be used to substantiate proposals and forms of methods. So I'm going to continue this study. As for the second question, and analysis of foreign experience, I would like to mention that certainly foreign experience of the use of joint developments in the activity of innovation-oriented companies is very important, and I believe it would be reflected in further works as well. The third question and factors that were included, yes, I agree. Thank you very much for the comment. Indeed, these factors and concepts that we use to consider the models, they can be modernized. And the fourth question was on the definition of innovations. As I've already mentioned in my answers to Professor Matavilov, the author had the goal to show different definitions, and as the federal law took this definition from the Oslo manual, I decided to give this initial source. Thank you very much. And now we move further, and I give the floor to Professor Alexeyev. Please, you have the floor. Dear colleagues, hello once again. Should I read the text, or can I speak with my own words. As any review, it has certain general phrases, and I don't want to read them out, therefore I'll just give you the essence. But certainly I will be based on the review that I've submitted. I would like to say at once that I support this work, and what I want to mention, we really mentioned the relevance as an achievement of the work. Mostly that's the most uninteresting point, and we just mentioned that the work is relevant and that's it. I know the thesis supervisor, and I know that he has his peculiar scientific school, therefore I was very interested to read this work, and within the framework of this scientific school every PhD student is based on the relevant topic that corresponds with the mainstream of the discourse. So the topic is not invented, it is closely connected with the real life situation, it is substantiated by the scientific literature, and these works correspond with the current trends. As for substantiation, certainly I believe so, because the author gives a lot of hypotheses and a lot of literature sources, and I have no questions here at all, as my colleagues mentioned. As for the novelty, I would like to say that all the experimental data are fully satisfactory, they are clear, they are quite understandable, there are no questions about them. As for the scientific novelty and how I see it, certainly I agree with the positions of the candidate for the degree, but I would rather give my own vision. First, the substantiation of the choice of marketing and the model of 2G pool. Second point, I would determine the process of interaction with the consumer in the development of the product and the improvement of the mapping technology for quality control, and also fourth point, the development of innovative structure that combines the participants that are aimed at the development of the innovative prospect. Then we should define the socioeconomic parameters to motivate the participants of the innovative project. And sixth point, I would like to formulate the positions of universities based on the interaction of customer and client in the development of functionality of the product. I believe that you can think about such definitions. Certainly the results are quite important for science and for practice. The scientific content is defined by the 6 novel provisions. As for the recommendations, I believe that recommendations are already used in the work of Technopark and other innovative structures of St. Petersburg State University. Therefore, I believe there's no need for my recommendations, but still I offer to include this work into the academic program of bachelor and master courses of St. Petersburg State University and other institutions. As for the content, I believe we read everything. I believe that the work is quite finished and it is an independent study. As for problem setting, the problems are quite relevant. The implementation of experimental data is quite relevant as well, and the results are quite new. And as for debating points, I don't formulate them as some criticisms, but they are rather offers to consider. Certainly we can have a dispute here on these points. I would like to mention just 3 provisions. The author believes that the paradigm of open innovation is the prerequisite for the development of the concept of joint value creation. We all know this paradigm quite well. Chasburn wrote about it and so on. But the thing is that it was not widespread. And there are 10 or 12 platforms, no more than that, if we talk about info communication sphere. Therefore, I believe that people are not interested in this issue, and these platforms are not transferred to other spheres. They are not expanding. And yet another point, when we have this question of core value co-creation, is the issue of innovative ecosystems. Because there, the core of the ecosystem that includes the consumer is using this concept. This concept of innovative ecosystems is based on the logic of value co-creation. So that is the core and the understanding of the system. And that's not just a novel concept. In Europe, they have already reviews on the existing ecosystems. They are all described. And now we're working on the ground. So that's a transparent story. And they have quite a lot of cases for each innovative ecosystem, and we can see this value co-creation between the customer and the client. Therefore, in this methodological platform, I'll be based not on the Chasburn concept, but rather on the concept of innovative ecosystems, because their logic is based on the creation of joint value. In St. Petersburg State University, as far as I know, this business incubator is based on polysectoral sphere, and each of the firms is included into an ecosystem, regional or federal ecosystem, and there they show this value co-creation. But overall, the choice of methodological platform is a matter of choice. Second point, as for the method of the study, questionnaires when studying the nature and mechanisms of value co-creation and innovative processes. I won't give a lot of arguments why I disagree, but what I want to mention. You see, any quantitative studies are good for such events that are already in place, that already have certain statistics that can be used to demonstrate these characteristics of events. But when we're talking about value co-creation, I believe that's just a start concept in Russia. Studying it using quantitative methods is dubious because it's unlikely that we will see something. I would use case studies, and in case studies we would see exactly what had happened. I can't even give you a pool of examples at once on case studies and value co-creation in Russia, because we need to search for that. But developing each of such cases would show us the Russian specificity. Maybe you could use both and add up case studies. I believe this would give us an interesting understanding of this nature. And third point, just a formal one. A very large parts on innovations, on Chadwick scale, on QFD models, and on other universally known terms. You can just refer to them. You don't need to give such a lengthy explanation for them. Certainly, I would like to see more economic discussion in the work. But still, I believe, does not influence the positive assessment of the work, and I believe that the work is characterized by high quality. And I believe that the thesis by Yulia Rybakova, titled Value Co-Creation, concept within the development of innovative products meets the requirements of the orders of September the 1st, 2016 on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University. And Ms. Rybakova deserves the academic degree of the candidate of Sciences and Economics in Specialization, Economics and National Economy Management, Innovation Management. Article 11 of the above-mentioned order is not violated. So, thank you very much. That's it. Thank you very much, Professor Alexeyev. And now I give the floor to Yulia to answer. Andrei Alexeyevich, thank you very much for the comments. Indeed, you emphasize a lot of these debating points, and I believe I'll use them in further development of my study. As for the first question on the innovation ecosystems, indeed, you mentioned it right that that's quite a relevant topic for this work. And therefore, in the future, I believe we'll be able to somehow correct my point of view and consider it from the different point of view. And as for the second question and the methods of the study, it should be mentioned that the author initially decided to organize a field study as a questionnaire poll. Certainly, that's not an ideal method, and it has certain drawbacks that you've mentioned. But as well, I would like to mention that this moderate and weak correlation ties for practical field studies is a good indicator, because in real time, in real world, we don't see the factors that strongly correlate with each other. And in further studies, I'm going to use other methods for polling of respondents, including the case study method that is now quite popular, and we'll be able to find certain examples and consider them in my further work. And as for the third question, and these universal notions and ideas in the work, I would like to mention that that's a scientific work, because therefore it provides for the analysis of scientific terms and classifications. Therefore, the author decided to give more details for certain systems like the smart home systems, in order to give a detailed review of the product. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues who already read out their reviews, I would like to ask you whether the answer is you find the answer satisfactory? Yes? 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 I heard everything. Olga, are you satisfied with the answers? Yes? Yes? Thank you very much. We continue. As Professor Dolbush is absent, I'll read his review. The review emphasizes the relevance of the topic, and also scientific substantiation of recommendations is considered, and also the professor writes about the scientific contribution of Yulia into the conducted study, and I'll shortly read out the scientific Nobel Team. The authors specify the terminology framework of open innovations, and she substantiated the provision of shifting to client-oriented innovations. And also the author offered the modified method of the structuring of the quality function with the transfer of part of functions on production and maintenance to client. And above all, she offered to modify the functional organizational structure of the company that is working with the development of client-oriented innovations, introducing the customer into the group, which gives an opportunity to create an individualized product for the customer. And within the framework of the empirical study with the use of regression models, she confirmed the hypothesis of the need to open up a platform to create to secure value co-creation on the basis of St. Petersburg State University. These are the novel provisions found in the thesis. And also, professor gives some remarks and questions. First of all, it should be recognized that the author analyzed a sufficient number of approaches to the definition of innovation before providing her own client-oriented innovation definition. But I believe that the author should have given a more specific definition for client-oriented innovation in order to separate it from open innovations. Second point, one shouldn't use the abbreviations that are not commonly accepted. And third point, the author writes that the consumer feels certain joy, that's page 15, from participating in value co-creation. And the question is whether it's true for the B2B market. And regardless of these comments, the work is quite valid, as well as the scientific provisions. And the thesis of Yulia Rybakova corresponds with the requirements of the order on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, and Ms. Rybakova deserves the academic degree of the candidate of sciences and economics in specialization 080005, and Article 11 of the above mentioned order is not violated. And the signature, Professor Tobash from the Economic Department, the Budapest University of Technology and Economics. Thank you very much. I'll answer. As for the difference in definitions of client-oriented innovations and open innovations, I should mention that open innovations provide for the development of the product in cooperation with partners and customers, and client-oriented innovations, unlike open innovations, provide for the involvement of the customer in the process of cooperation and development at all stages of the production cycle. As for the second point, the use of different abbreviations, certainly I'll take that into account, but I will correct that. And third point, as for this joy of participation, certainly this emotional joy characterizes the B2C market when a final customer is involved in this joint development process and he creates the product for himself. But this factor can be also true for the B2B market when a company is involved in this co-development process, and the participants certainly are glad to participate in the development of the product that will be used for the company. Thank you, Yulia. And now my review. First of all, I would like to say that the work is very interesting, very relevant, and quite a good one from the point of view of methodology, theory, and practical value. I'll shortly read out a few words about the Nobel Team, and I'll mention some drawbacks that I've mentioned. As for the Nobel Team, I would like to say the following things. The author's interpretation of client-oriented innovation is of particular interest, as well as the transformation of models of the companies during the transition to these innovations. That's page 31. She substantiates the provision on the shift to client-oriented innovations as a result of the study of theoretical approaches and business models within the framework of the open innovations theory. Second point, we should agree with the author on the new role of marketing as a strategic instrument of the involvement and the integration of partners and consumers into the innovation process. That's page 31. 3. The consideration of instruments of the concept of value co-creation is quite novel. If we talk about the Russian innovation-oriented companies, that's page 55-60, and also the significant contribution of the author, namely the opportunity to consider the calculation of the competitiveness index of the system smart home. The author also analyzed the dynamics of the use of instruments of the concept of value co-creation by Russian innovation-oriented companies on the basis of the field study using the example of St. Petersburg companies. And we also checked, the author also checked the hypothesis on the interaction of parameters of innovative-oriented company 6. The author studied the propensity of contemporary consumer to participation in co-creative activities and in the development of the product. Based on the field study, she defined the innovativeness, the propensity to joint participation, and the motivation to participate in joint development, and also preferable ways of participation in joint developments. And the author also offered the model of innovative infrastructure of the university that includes crowdfunding and crowdsourcing platforms. That's pages 127 and 135. The scientific provisions are quite valid, substantiated. And now a few words about the drawbacks. So, considering client-focused innovations, the author establishes this the time between the client focus and the success of the company in the market. But still, we should consider the aspect on the type of the innovation, because this aspect demonstrates the stability of the competitive advantage that the company acquires. This aspect is particularly important when the author defines the goal of cooperation. And also, I was surprised that the author, in his concept of client-oriented innovation, does not use the approaches to the definition provided by marketing experts, though she emphasizes that she uses the innovation marketing that on pages 7, 10, and 14 and 15. Then the information on the marketing team and the stages, I believe that's not something new. There's information on pages 61 and 62, and the goal, the description of smart home system is on the goal of it. It's unclear, and above all, the work has certain structural drawbacks. For example, it's unclear what is the section of text on pages 89, 96, but these remarks do not influence the high mark that I would like to give to this thesis, and these remarks do not question the importance of this work. And the general conclusion is that the thesis corresponds with the requirements as of the order on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, and Ms. Rybakova deserves the academic degree of the Candidate of Sciences and Economics and in Specialization 080005, and Article 11 of the above-mentioned order is not violated. So that's it. Thank you very much. Yulia, please, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Professor, for the comments. As for the answer to the first question, certainly the aspects and types of developed innovation is important, and I restrict this notion of this use of the notion of client-oriented innovation. That are mostly incremental innovations. As for the second question and marketing definitions, I should mention that the work reflects the approach of Yulia that writes about client-centered innovations, and I support her position. As for other authors, they are writing about client-oriented approach in the creation of innovations, but that's a different thing. As for the second question on the marketing team, the novelty here is to reorganize this team in order to include the potential consumer that should take part in all stages of development. And as for question on the description of the smart home system, I've already mentioned that. I emphasize that I believe it was important to give this information in order to secure a comprehensive understanding of the market. And as for the last comment, the analysis of the activity of European business incubators was carried out in the work in order to define and to understand the mechanisms of the creation and functioning of business incubators. And then using this analysis, I gave hypothesis and made a conclusion on the need to create and develop the business incubator at St. Petersburg State University. Thank you very much. Yulia, we continue our session. And I'll read out the questions submitted during the session on the website. We had questions. A question from Violeta Khabibulina. She welcomes everyone present. That's a candidate of sciences in biology. The academic study status, the independent researcher, and she has the following question. The first question on the design of the study. How you operationalize the notion of what you study, considering the fact that judging by the methods and goals, your study resembles the study in psychology and sociology. In other words, how you and your respondents did not mix the facts in order to meet the expectations of St. Petersburg State University. So please, Yulia, do you understand the question, or should I read it out once again? Okay. How did you operationalize the notion of what you studied, the development of innovative product, considering the fact that, judging by the goals and methods, your study resembles the study in sociology and psychology? That's the first point. Yes, I believe that's most important in this question. Thank you very much for the question. Here I should mention that the goal of the study was to study the innovativeness and the propensity to co-creative activities. Certainly there is a mixture of sociology and economics, and we questioned that in our questionnaire. We also asked questions about the consumer behavior. Therefore, we can say that this is the research that gives us economic conclusions that can be used to improve the marketing strategies of the companies that work with consumers. And here I would like to read the continuation of this first question. And the author comments on the author of Mr. Bayarkov that, so you're working in a holding, and it's clear that that's a marketing trick to get state financing. So how can you comment on that? Well, the activity of the holding and the specific study are not interconnected. Certainly we used the different methods in different projects implemented within the framework of the holding, but as for state support, certainly I don't consider this option in my work, and this data can't be used in order to secure state support. And we know that the projects that the Ministry of Industry implements, they are aimed at different fields. If we talk about radio electronic industry, and other projects are supported by the state as well as other companies. Thank you, Yulia. Second comment. What is the logical connection of the questioning students in order to conduct the study? And by the way, innovative groups under coercion were quite efficient during Stalinist era, and for our country, I believe it is forgotten. So that is the question submitted. Thank you very much for the question. Let's start with the end. The innovation group notions are different. For example, they may include the consumers of products or services. Therefore, we can't connect it with repressions, and we won't do that. And certainly the study was organized to understand the need to modernize the structure that the university already has in order to improve the efficiency of the work of the structure. And the last question. Did you compare your results with others? For example, the European University of St. Petersburg held large-scale studies of the innovative technological enterprises, and I remember the report of the head of the group, Igor Fedyukin, before he was appointed a deputy minister of Education and Science in 2011-2012. So did you compare your results with these studies? Certainly I carried out certain comparative analysis, considering the fact that during Medvedev era, the innovativeness and innovative companies were actively developing. Therefore, there were quite a lot of such people who were dealing with such studies. I'm not familiar with the person that you mentioned and the study that you mentioned, but certainly I'll take that into account. Thank you very much, Violetta. And we continue. So we had more external questions and comments. So please introduce yourself. Hello, my name is Alexandra Slepinina. I'm a master's student of St. Petersburg State University, and I work as a co-organizer of delivery points. I have two questions. The first one. How do you think, is this concept applied mostly to the B2B market? Because in the B2C market, it leads either to the creation of a product that can't be scaled, or it will not be popular because it restricts competition currently in the consumer market. Whereas in the B2B market, this could be a more efficient way to resolve the current sectoral problems. Alexandra, thank you very much for the question. No, I don't think so, because in the B2B market, basically for a very long period of time, we had this concept when the product is created for the customer, when it's a tailored product. But in the B2C market, this trend is quite a recent one. It emerged 10 years ago, and now the market is shifting to the active use of this concept in the B2C market, because the consumer is becoming so picky, and the consumer wants the company to satisfy the needs of the customer. And as I've already mentioned in my work, this helps the customer not just to get the product that he or she wants, but also to save certain money. And as for the company, the producer, the transfer of options for the choice is not costly. Therefore, producers can vary the products in order to tailor for a specific customer and not to bear certain expenses. Thank you very much. Next question. If you assess the opportunity and the need to create a business incubator based at St. Petersburg State University, why don't you address more successful experience of the university, or ITMO University, that launched this incubator earlier and has a more active policy of the interaction of the projects with outside investors, stakeholders, and state organizations? Maybe the assessment of this experience would allow to avoid problems and to understand whether we need such options as crowdsourcing and crowdfunding platforms. Yes, here I agree that within the framework of St. Petersburg reality, the ITMO business incubator was quite successful, and they announced the establishment of the Technopark. I believe that's a good example and a good experience. Within the framework of my work, I organized a study in the analysis of the activity of European business incubators, because at that point Europe was actively developing the market of university business incubators. Therefore, I analyzed their activity, and based on that, I made a conclusion on how we can use their experience in order to implement this structure at St. Petersburg State University. But certainly the comment is quite fair, that even here in the local market we can see good examples that were successfully implemented, and certainly we can use their successful experience and look at the problems in order to eliminate further problems. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we continue. Please, we give the floor to thesis supervisor. Guy, please tell us about the candidate for the degree, about her work. Distinguished colleagues, indeed, my goal was to say a few words about the qualifications of our candidate for the degree. I've been working with Yulia for more than 10 years. She defended her bachelor coursework, master thesis, and she worked in the with me for many years. She is quite skilled in field studies, in econometrics, and she has very good skills. If we talk about the use of software, she knows English quite well. She continuously delivers reports at international conferences, and she also gives lectures at the academic gymnasium at St. Petersburg State University, and she has a practical course of our students. And shortly summing up, I believe that she is a representative of the School of Innovation of the Faculty of Economics of St. Petersburg State University, and I take pride in her work. Thank you very much, Nikolai. We continue. And I would like to inform you that as we hold our session with participants who are working remotely, I would like to ask if the members of the board or anyone present have any questions connected with the work in remote mode. If there are any questions or comments, please feel free to state. There are no questions. Okay. Distinguished colleagues, as we have an opportunity to announce a break before the vote, I would like to ask you if we need such a break to discuss the results of the defense or not. What do you think? Olga, do we need such a break? No, I'm ready to announce my decision at once. I don't need a break. Yes, I support that. Andrei, what about you? No? Yes? I also understand everything. I don't need a break. Okay, no need for me as well. Therefore, I raise a question on the award of the academic degree of the candidate of economic sciences in specialization 080005 economics and national economy management, innovation management. So we're going to organize an open vote, and let me remind you that the decision of the Dissertation Board is on conferring the academic degree is positive, provided more than 50% of the board members, but not fewer than 3 people, voted in favor, in conformity with Section 23 of the order. So please, Oleg Matavilov, I vote for the award of the academic degree. Then Andrei Alexeyev votes for. Okay. Olga Karablova, I vote for the award of the academic degree. Okay. Vladimir Platonov, yes, I vote for as well. And I, as a chairman, also vote for the award of the academic degree. Now, distinguished colleagues and guests, I would like to announce that out of the 6 members of the board, 5 members voted for, no one voted against, and no one abstained from the vote. Therefore, the decision on the award of the academic degree of the candidate of sciences in economics to Yulia Rybakova in specialization economics and national economy management, innovation management is made. Distinguished colleagues, due to the fact that our session is held remotely, I would like to ask if the candidate for the degree or anyone present has any questions on the procedure of our board session. Olga, what's your opinion? No, I have no comments. Andrei? No comments. Everything is okay. Vladimir, what about you? No comments? Oleg? No questions, no comments. I have none as well. So, now we give the floor for the finalizing remarks to Yulia. Thank you very much, everyone. First of all, I would like to express gratitude to all the members of the board. Thank you so much for taking your time to get acquainted with my work. Thank you very much for the comments, because these are very important aspects that will help me to grow and to develop my work further on. And I would like to thank the members of the Department of Dissertation Board support for help and support in current situation. We always manage to find a solution. And I would like to thank all the members of the R&D Economy Department for support. This not only improved my work, but also made me sure that I pursue the right way. And I would like to thank my thesis supervisor, Professor Molchanov. Thank you so much for your trust in me, for insistence, for your guidance, and thank you very much for being here for me. Because I felt very secure. And I would like to thank my family and my friends who supported me in my studies and stimulated me and urged me to continue when I felt depressed. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Yulia. On behalf of all the members of the board, I would like to congratulate you with successful defense. We wish you a bright future, both in science and in other spheres that are of interest to you. And I close our session, and I would like to thank everyone for taking part in it. And I ask to turn off the